All right, welcome back, athletes. We're going to talk about how do you progress in a movement-focused training system. You've already heard us talk about why a movement-focused training system is important and why we think that it will change the way healthcare is delivered. And you've already heard about some of the ways that we're going to look at movement and movement ownership. And now we're going to talk about how do you go from A to B to C, etc. The first thing is there's two things that we're going to do. We're going to work on position and movement, and those things help you getting better at position and movement, help you progress and express the existing strength that you have. And then the third thing is, hey, how do we get stronger in those movements and positions? So the first thing that we're going to talk about is positions. And can you even be in the start and ending positions? And you might think, well, Saul, I can squat. So let's take that example of squatting. Can you be in those positions and really be owning those positions? So can you be in this position and can you go into this deep squat pattern? Okay, yeah, that's great. Can we flip you over? And can you be in this position? Okay, you can do that. Now, what's the ending position? Well, the ending position is this position right here, and you'd be surprised at how few people can nail that position. So we want to have just a little tiny space here in our lower spine, and then we're going to come up here and do this, and go into our squat position. And then we're going to add a little bit of load, and go, and we're going to stand up in a squat. And then we can go over here. And can we be in the squat position? Yes. Can we stick this leg out? Yes. Can we add a little bit of load? Not so much load, a little bit of load that would be similar to a squatting pattern. And can you stick that leg out and still be stable? So can the hip move, but the torso not move? Those are the ways that we're going to look at the positions. And we're going to drive right into the movement. But we want to be very clear about these positions, and that we want to talk about when I am doing a press, we want to be very clear about, hey, I'm going to extend my elbow. When I'm doing a squat, I'm going to have my ankles, my knees, my hips flexed and then fully extended. When we're doing a hinge, we might have our hips flexed. We'll probably have a hinge flex. We'll have our hips extended, and then back here hyperextended sometimes. So make sure we want to be clear with the words so that you can take ownership of those movements and positions. All right, so now as we transition into doing the movements, we want to make sure we can do our starting and ending, move between those starting and ending positions. Then the next thing, what we're going to do is start changing the starting and finishing or ending positions. We are going to change the tempo and the speed that we move in between those starting and ending positions. We might get dynamically into the starting position. So think of jumping lunge or something like that, or clean and jerk, something like that. And then we want to start taking those movements and we want to start changing the planes in which we do them. So if we have a standard sort of up and down sagittal plane type movement, we want to start moving it side to side and then maybe even rotating, maybe even doing all of those things all at once. Something that you would find in a getup. That's how you progress in the movement in a movement focused system. You work on your positions first, you nail those, you make sure that you can do that with your spine on the ground, with your spine suspended between your arms and your legs, like a hand and knee position. We might do them in a stack position, so in kneeling or tall kneeling, half kneeling, and then standing. And then we'll take that and we'll say, hey, let's change the movement around a little bit, and then finally, let's add a little bit more load to that. Now the last thing on this is, when we're adding our load, that's not the end. It's really just the one part of it, the last teeny tiny part of it. If you have a pyramid, the position is down here, the movement is a little bit more important, and then the tip top is your strength. And we want to make sure that if we're going to add load, we're not going to change the positions that you are starting in and ending, and we don't want to change the movements as well. And let me just give you a quick example of that. So one thing is, we'll start with position first. When we're doing, for instance, a half kneeling press, we're going to take that kettlebell and just press. And then say that you are nailing that, you're doing great, you've done 100 reps, 150 reps, 200 reps of that. Hey, I'm ready to go up and weight. So one way is, if you start a little bit early, you might have to kick your hip out this way and then come back. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, and especially if the first times that you're doing this weight and this new weight, you might want to use that technique, but eventually we want to be able to keep centered knee, hip, and then shoulder all in the same place. Nothing below the armpit moves. The second thing that you will see a lot of people do is change the movement. And for instance, I'm going to do my row here. Now let's pretend I'm using a heavier sandbag. And then we start going here. So then we start flexing at the knee, ankles. And we start meeting that sandbag halfway down. In the beginning, like I said, maybe that's good, you get used to the weight, but eventually, in the very near future, maybe after even just one set, you want to make sure that you're back to your old friends. Nothing moves in the ankle, nothing moves in the knee, nothing moves in the hips, no movement in your trunk or your spine. You're just going to pull that weight into it. All right, so giving you a quick run through of the movement-based, movement-focused training system. See you next time for How to Read the Programming.